All right, let's talk about one of the biggest, most persistent myths in all of fitness. We've all heard it, right? You can't build muscle and lose fat at the same time. You got to pick one. You're either bulking or you're cutting. Well, today we're going to bust that belief wide open and see if it's actually true or if it's just holding a lot of us back.
And this quote right here, this is going to be our guiding light today. Because, the fitness world is just drowning in opinions, gym lore, and what some influencers said last week. Our whole goal here is to just cut through all that noise and stick to what the actual hard evidence says. So let's just dive right in. This is the big question, isn't it? It's the one that starts 1,000 arguments online. Is body recomposition, losing fat and gaining muscle at the very same time, is it for real? Or is it just some fantasy that only happens for total beginners? To really get why this is so debated, you have to understand where all the confusion comes from. For years, there's been this giant internet brawl over nutrition, and it's basically split the entire fitness community into two very different, very loud camps. So on one side, you've got the if it fits your macros, or IIFYM crowd. They're all about the idea that as long as your calories and your macros, your protein, carbs, and fat are on point, the actual food you eat doesn't really matter for your body composition. Then, on the other side, you have the clean eaters. They're convinced you absolutely have to eat clean foods to get results. As we're about to see, the real answer is, well, it's a little more complex than either side wants to admit. So the root of this whole myth comes from this simple but kind of flawed idea. We're told you can't be anabolic, which is just a fancy word for muscle building, and catabolic, fat losing, at the same time. But here's the thing that idea totally misses. Your fat and your muscles, they are two completely different systems. Your body is way smarter than we give it credit for. It can totally pull energy from your fat stores to fuel the growth of your muscle tissue. One can feed the other. Okay, so enough with the theory. What actually happens when we stop arguing on the internet and put this stuff to the test in a real lab? Let's forget the hearsay for a minute and just follow the data. First up, we've got this really cool study from 2017 that looked at collegiate female volleyball players. Now, what's so great about this one is that we're not talking about people who've never touched a weight before. These are elite athletes. That makes the results way more relevant for those of us who are already pretty dedicated to our training. And check this out. The results were absolutely incredible. In just 7 weeks, these athletes lost an average of 6 pounds of fat while gaining 6 pounds of lean mass. Just think about that for a second. That is a complete one-for-one swap. This isn't just some theory. It's straight up, undeniable body recomposition happening in highly trained athletes. But okay, that's where the real skeptics jump in, right? They'll say, sure, maybe for some athletes, but there's no way that's possible for a really experienced lifter who's been at it for years. Well, let's see about that. To really push this idea to its limit, another study found some seriously strong dudes. We're talking guys with a minimum of 3 years of nonstop training under their belts. People who could squat almost double their body weight. These were not beginners. These were the exact people who were always told that recomposition is impossible for them. And after 9 weeks of some pretty intense, high-volume training, the average result was already a huge win. The group as a whole gained way more lean mass than they did fat mass, which means their body fat percentage actually went down. So right there, that's already recomposition. But honestly, the individual results are where it gets really mind-blowing. And here it is. This is the kicker. Out of the 17 men in this study, 5 of them, that's almost 30%, did the thing everyone says can't be done. They literally lost body fat and gained muscle mass at the same time. This isn't some freak accident. It's a real, significant outcome for nearly a third of the group. Now brace yourself for the single best result from that group. One guy gained over 8 pounds of muscle while dropping over 4 pounds of fat. And that wasn't over a year. That was a 9-week transformation. So if anyone ever tries to tell you it can't be done, well, the science just flat out disagrees. So now that we've seen the cold, hard data, let's switch gears and talk about something that can be just as powerful: the psychological walls we build for ourselves. Sometimes the biggest thing holding us back is simply what we believe is possible. And the perfect example of this is the 4-minute mile. For forever, it was considered a physical impossibility, a hard limit on the human body. Then, in 1954, this guy Roger Bannister came along and just did it. He shattered that belief. And what happened next? Once that psychological barrier was broken, thousands of other runners have since done the impossible. And that right there, that is the fitness industry's 4-minute mile. This widespread belief that you just can't build muscle while losing fat is a kind of cultural groupthink. It's a self-limiting belief that the evidence just doesn't support, but it hangs around and it stops people from even trying. So we've looked at the science, we've challenged the old beliefs. But what does all of this actually mean for you, for your goals, and for what you're doing in the gym day in and day out?
Look, here's the bottom line. Body recomposition is not a myth. It's not a fairy tale. The evidence is clear that it's absolutely achievable, even for people who've been training for years. Now, is it easy? No way. It takes a really smart, diligent, evidence-based approach to your training and your nutrition. But your potential is not defined by what some guy in the locker room said. The most important thing you can do is to stop putting these artificial limits on yourself.
So I'm just going to leave you with this thought from Henry Ford. The science has already shown us what's physically possible. The only question left is, what are you going to allow yourself to believe is possible? Because in the end, that belief, that might just be the most important part of the whole equation.